probably saw the title of the video. This is going to be a review of the new horror movie Weapons. This is the second feature film from Zack Gregger, his first being Barbarian, which I think is one of the best horror movies of the 2020 so far. A film that is simultaneously really funny for whatever reason, just kind of bonkers in every sense, and also is saying quite a bit about a lot of different things. And Weapons is very much in the same vein, but first I want to mention the central premise of this film, as it sees Cregger broadening his scale. Before I start, I did want to say I might be lightly spoiling this film. I'll try to keep it as vague as possible, but I also don't want to have to censor myself too much when I'm talking about this film. So I'll try as hard as I can to not say specifics about the plot, but there will be kind of small moments in this film that I will be spoiling lightly. So if you're interested in this movie in any way and you haven't seen it, I don't know why you're watching a review of it. You should just go watch the movie. The logline is one of the most interesting ones that I've heard in a very long time. In some small town, 17 kids, all from the same classroom at 2:17 at night, get up and just run out of their parents' house and never come back, which is already such a solid hook. But on top of that, this film is also using a lot of different plot lines, a lot of different characters, and switching perspectives multiple times throughout the film, exploring the lives of the people that were affected by the loss of these children and the people that are trying to find them. This is sort of in the vein of, I guess, Magnolia and Pulp Fiction. And notice that the two films that I'm mentioning are not horror movies, because this is a very unorthodox way to structure a horror film, kind of similar to the way Barbarian is strangely structured. And I think, once again, Cregger pulls that off incredibly well within the screenplay. Each sort of chapter always ends on this odd cliffhanger that just leaves you kind of baffled and confused as to what is actually going on in this film. And then gradually it just keeps building up until you get this incredibly monstrous third act where everything really comes together narratively. I do have a small criticism about the third act, and it's really the only bad thing I have to say about this movie. For the rest of this review, I will basically be overwhelmingly positive. But the third act does end too quickly. It has this moment of emotional catharsis that's very satisfying and one of the better moments of the entire film. And then it just kind of ends, and we don't really get time to sit in the way that the characters are impacted by the way that this film ends, which I found to be an odd choice. He does this in Barbarian as well, where Barbarian just ends once all the danger is sort of dissipated from the narrative. But this film in particular, I think, because it's so much about grief and the trauma of losing someone, you do need to sort of sit in the aftermath of the climax's events. But other than the somewhat abrupt ending, this film is structured so flawlessly. Starts off so small scale and really getting into the emotions, the personal aspects of the ramifications of this disappearance, and then gradually expanding the scale with each chapter to the point where we feel like we have an entire viewpoint of this whole town by the end of this film, which thematically is quite dense, and I think I would probably need a whole separate video explaining what this movie's about, and I don't even think I particularly know, and it is intentionally ambiguous and abstract. There's obviously those ideas of trauma, of grief, and also kind of abuse in a household or school shootings in some sense. There's a lot going on, and each character brings an entirely new perspective in this film. I'm still a little on the fence about what the cop and the heroin addict are doing in this movie, and I think that's where it starts to lose me a little bit. Not in terms of entertainment value, I still think those moments are honestly some of the best of the entire film, but in terms of what the movie's actually getting at, it is just so dense and about so many things that it gets a little bit confusing. But that's thematically and narratively, it's always very, very coherent and really tightly scripted. There's not a loose end in this film at all. Every single thing is used to pay off something else. This film just keeps moving and zigging and zagging in very strange ways. It's also similar to Barbarian, balancing horror and comedy really, really effectively. I would say ever since Jordan Peele started making movies, ever since Get Out, horror has had this thing where it's becoming more comedically bent. And Cregger, who similar to Peele also came up in sketch comedy, is definitely carrying on that new tradition. This is perhaps most indicative in the score, which has a couple of eerie, more generic horror score moments, but for the most part it is very percussive and very kooky and like kind of goofy in a lot of ways. It's very unorthodox, but provides a lighter tone to a lot of the moments within this film, and definitely emphasizes the mystery rather than the horror aspects. But this movie is quite scary, although I would describe it more as unsettling. Cregger really subverts expectations with these scares, where most horror movies would go for bland, predictable jump scares. He just does something a lot stranger and a lot more out there that is equally, if not more, terrifying. There's a particular scare early on in the movie that involves scissors in a car that I found to be the perfect example of how this movie balances comedy and horror, because half my theater was like uneasy and unsettled by this scene, and then I just thought it was really funny. And it's not even like, oh, this is unintentionally funny, because I think some people think if a horror movie is funny when it's supposed to be scary, then it's bad. But this movie is very much towing that line to the point where there are moments where you're supposed to laugh. And it's fun to see a movie that is meshing those two genres together in a way that I feel no other filmmaker really ever has. And just 2 films in, Cregger just has such a great grasp over how to make a film, how to structure a movie, how to edit a movie, how to shoot a film. One thing visually that stuck out to me is there are close-ups, but for the most part they're wide shots, and even when there are close-ups, he always like leaves the edges of the frame open to the viewer as a way to sort of get them uneasy, get them scared about what is going on behind the character. He's very aware of how people watch horror movies and the way that everyone is always anticipating the next scare. And as a result, some of the more creepy, eerie moments are moments that actually don't have a scare at all. They're just moments of characters talking. But because it just has this deeply creepy atmosphere, every single scene has that feel. There's also a lot of surreal, psychologically disturbing imagery within this film, specifically within a pair of dream sequences in the first act that I think are the 2 moments where, if you want to more deeply explore thematically what this film is getting at, that's where you should probably go. There's a lot of symbolism within this that I think went over my head, and as a result, on a rewatch, I would be interested to see exactly what I think this movie is about. Maybe it's different from what I think it's about right now. And I typically love movies that just have so many different ideas within them, but often they can come off as a little messy, and Weapons absolutely does not, largely because it's mainly concerned with being just a really fun horror movie, even when it is getting into deeply intense and traumatic subject matter. In terms of the cast, everyone is doing a really, really great job. Julia Garner and Josh Brolin sort of function as the emotional core of this film. And then you have Alden Abrams, who has the most comedic bend to his performance. It reminded me a bit of what Justin Long was doing in Barbarian, of like a flawed and also like deeply uncaring and kind of selfish person being thrust into a situation where they have to help somebody. And he's someone who's also very indifferent with the world around him. And so it's fun to watch that juxtaposition of him being thrown into a like really intense situation and trying to like almost disassociate it from it in real time. Another standout performance was Amy Madigan, who I don't want to get into exactly who or what her character is, because it is quite crucial to the plot, but just really, really creepy in so many moments. Kind of uncanny in her movements and the way that she speaks, and is like towing the line between feeling kind of human but also feeling like this insane supernatural force. So yeah, really great performances, a brilliant premise that is executed quite well, a very inventively structured film, just so original with everything that it's doing, and is paced so well, the way that it starts slow and then just gradually amps up the momentum, the intensity, until you get to just like an absolute show-stopping third act. This is really everything you'd want from a horror movie, maybe everything you'd want from a movie in general. I thought this was incredible. A great sophomore feature from Zack Gregger. Can't wait to see what he does next. Definitely going to rewatch this and might even do a second video getting more into the spoilers and the themes and ideas within this film. But at the same time, I don't know if I'm exactly the person to be doing that, because I don't really truly know what this movie's about, which is what makes it so exciting to me. I would give Weapons a 4.5 out of 5. Had some high expectations and they were met, if not exceeded. So yeah, if you like horror, really if you like movies in general, you should go see Weapons because it is incredible. One of the best movies of the year so far. Certainly the best horror movie of the year. So yeah, that's really all I got to say. In a few days, I will be reviewing Together, another new horror movie that came out recently. And that's it. Bye-bye.